Hello, everyone. Today is Christmas Eve. It's December 24th, 2014, and I have a very land-breaking event here today. I have Kevin Annett on the line to respond to some of the accusations that have been made and just give some clarification for all of you, especially through this season. The point to this is not to be reactionary. The point is to provide you enough information to make an educated decision within your own mind and your own heart. I think most of you that have been following Kevin's work all along already have that feeling and that vibe, but today I felt it was very important, as did Kevin, to at least provide you some of the information regarding some of the attacks and defamation that has been going on the internet regarding Kevin's character. I want to also preface this interview by stating that this is in no way, shape, or form going to become something on a regular basis where we do a tit for tat, especially if evidence is going to becoming force. This is not going to be something where we want to continue this drama. I know all of you have heard me say this before. It's very important that we take our authority back and not react like ping pong balls to all of the external stimulus around us, and that goes for information. So I know many out there have written in and have been very saddened because you really believe in Kevin and what he's doing, and now you're confused because of all the information that has been brought forth. That is the number one reason why we are doing this today. It is not to defame Alfred Webre. It is not to trash anybody's character, because we don't need to go there. It is strictly to have Kevin be able to defend himself against accusations that have been made that he feels very strongly need to be spoken aloud for all of you to hear from his lips. So let's bring Kevin on. Hey, Kevin, thank you for this impromptu interview.
That's okay. Thank you, Alexandra.
You're welcome. So I wanted to just dive right in, and a lot of people have said, well, you know, is anybody asking Kevin the hard questions? And I have never really found your character to be anything of avoiding answering questions, but I'm going to go ahead and just do just that. We're going to go ahead and get into the details of what has been spoken in this prior YouTube that was put out by Alfred Webre regarding that there was no ITCCS trial whatsoever of the United Kingdom Queen and Pope Ratzinger. And this was put out on the 22nd of December. When you listen to this interview, Kevin, one of the things that I noted immediately was there was a lot of cycles in the way that the information was presented to those watching the YouTube video. It seemed to be very repetitive, and there were a lot of, in my opinion, a lot of not so nice comments made about you personally, rather than just sticking to the facts of what they feel is wrong or not, you know, properly presented. I'm going to not go there, and I know you aren't either.
No.
So the first question right out the gate is, who is Alex Hunter, and who is Berard Band, and what is your association with them?
Well, Alex Hunter is somebody in Vancouver. He was hanging around our branch there for about a year or two. He took part in church protests, and then he dropped away, just like Alfred did, out of the blue, without provocation, nothing. He was just very hostile all of a sudden for no reason that I could see. He's been out of sight for a while, so for him to pop up again is mysterious. And in relation to the whole Berard Band situation, I mean, the broader take on this is it's not really information we're responding to, it's libel. And so I don't want to elevate libel to the level of information that we're dissecting. This is, in character assassination, you're meant to be drawn into the web of responding.
Yeah.
And there's not anything really to respond to because there's no evidence. It's just hearsay and rumor and name-calling. So, again, I don't want to dwell too much on that, but just for factual information for people, the Berard Band is one of the bands in Vancouver. One of the guys who claims to be a member of it, his name is Watchuk. He claims to be one of the hereditary chiefs from that area. A lot of people claim hereditary status. I have no way of proving it one way or the other. But like Alexandra, he did hang around our branch for about a year. He took part in one or two protests at the Holy Rosary Church. He said that he'd be willing to serve as a juror, but he never followed through. And neither did Alex. So for them to claim that they were jurors or had some knowledge of the courts or the ITCCS is simply not true.
So would they have received any kind of paperwork stating that they were going to be part of the court?
No, none whatsoever.
Okay. Because I believe that's what they insinuated. And I think one of my questions was, how did they know that it did not exist or take place if they themselves said that they never came?
Well, exactly. How can any of these people making these allegations, including Alfred Webre himself, know anything about the ITCCS? They never had any contact with the inner circle, with the judges in Brussels, whatever.
Okay. Now, can you clarify for all of us the difference between, Alfred makes a very good point about the world courts. You have the International Criminal Court, you have the World Court, and then you have the ITCCS Tribunal Court. Can you clarify the difference between those?
Yeah, well, he and I would sometimes talk about this on his shows. He pointed out, which is true, that the International Criminal Court is just a forum for disputes between states. So it's not really a forum, the International Criminal Court or the International Court of Justice in The Hague. It's not a forum in which the crimes of states or churches or institutions can be adjudicated. That's why the International Common Law Court of Justice was convened, because we had to create a forum whereby people who had suffered at the hands of genocidal institutions could have a way that they could actually put those institutions on trial. And that was clear right from the beginning, that we stood on a different legal foundation than these other existing courts, because these courts are simply they collude all the time with guilty institutions. The best example of that was the International Criminal Court claimed they were investigating the evidence against Joseph Ratzinger, Pope Benedict, and they spent over 2 years looking at what the Canadian press estimated was 22,000 pieces of evidence involving present or ex-Pope Benedict. And at the end of the day, the head of the ICC said, "Well, I'm sorry, we can't bring into judgment against the Pope. He's the head of a state, and we don't have jurisdiction." Well, if they were going to say that, why did they spend 2 years wasting everybody's time? It's because they were manipulated and paid, frankly, to look the other way on that. So these courts can easily be manipulated. That's why we had to create a common law court where, the citizen jurors and the public as a whole could be the final judge and jury.
Okay. And do you have any comment on the fact that they're stating that the ITCCS court out of Brussels basically does not exist, and all it has related to it is a zip code and a postal code?
Well, again, that's an outside observation because they don't have any access to it. The reason they don't have any access to it was a decision made to keep about 90% of the court out of sight. Now, that was based on real experiences that we in Canada and also they in Europe had. Whenever we create public organizations, they're infiltrated and destroyed from within. That's happened to me 3 times in Canada. It happened in the first tribunal we held in Vancouver in 1998. And infiltrated by 2 agents, including a fellow called Jim Craven, who was later exposed by the American Indian movement as an operative. It's happened numerous times. So literally, if we had gone public with the court, it would have been destroyed, and some of the people might have even ended up dead. That's happened before. Look at the example of Laurent Louis, the member of parliament of Belgium, who came out, was the only politician to publicly endorse what we were doing, and he was thrown out of parliament, and he's facing several years in jail for even suggesting that the politicians there were involved in child trafficking. That's what happens if you're public. Alfred knows that. He agreed with me over the air about that. He recognized that the court had to be anonymous, as had to be the identity of the judges, the court procedures, the court record. All of that had to be kept anonymous for now as part of our investigation, because look at the people we're up against are very powerful. And for us to go about thinking we could operate like a normal public court is a fallacy and would be suicidal, frankly. So that's why, yes, there isn't a public identification of the court. Despite that, we have released all of the evidence in the first trial, and for them to say that there isn't any evidence is absurd because we posted it all. All of the evidence, the 150 exhibits in the first court case of genocide in Canada, it's been up online for several months at itccs.org. In the second case, involving child trafficking in Europe, with the present Pope, the head of the Jesuits, etc., that information has been released selectively because the investigation is ongoing. And again, Alfred acknowledged the importance of doing that in previous interviews. We have released selective evidence from that second case, the testimonies of Anne-Marie van Dillenburg and Toos Nienhuis, referring to the Ninth Circle rituals and killings. So it is being selectively released. So they've really created an enormous red herring. And, you know, again, the whole flip-flop of one day Alfred's agreeing, the next he's attacking us for, you know, stating what he agreed with is just, you know, beyond understanding.
Well, you know, I think another question that probably rings true for a lot of people is most of us are not fully aware of, you know, experiencing a judicial trial of some sort. I mean, most people I know have never gone there. If someone were to come forth with this type of damning evidence and testimony, is there really such a thing as anonymity within our courts and judicial system, considering
No.
we're going all the way to the top and working against the Vatican and those that are behind this whole thing?
Exactly, Alexandra. That's the point. When, you know, it's like what the dilemma I found 20 years ago trying to raise the issue of genocide in Canada within the Canadian courts. You can't get the institution that committed the crime to neutrally adjudicate about their own crimes. That's absurd, and we've tried that. We tried that year after year in the Canadian courts. We were told by judges in the Supreme Courts in British Columbia and New Brunswick and Alberta, they all ruled that you cannot sue the Crown for genocide. Now, under international law, when you've exhausted the domestic legal remedies like that, and the courts in your own country are saying go away, you have to go to international courts. And the one we created was based on that experience. And so, you know, the whole understanding here is that it's, you know, you can't play by the rules of the game because the criminals control the rules, and you have to create your own rules. And that's, any tactician knows that that's just common sense.
And it does feel, for those of us that are very enlightened, the very first thing that smacked me was they really seem to be fishing for your testimonies.
Exactly. And why? You know, that's the question. I mean, it's that what they really wanted, and what Alfred immediately confronted me with, is that he wanted to know the names of the judges and the court record. And, of course, all the information in there is highly confidential. It's saying who the witnesses are, who the sources within the Vatican are. Why would we disclose that information? You know, when this is part of an ongoing investigation into child sacrificial murders.
I think many of us are scratching our head because Alfred, being a very intelligent man and who's been around the block, done some phenomenal interviews on how this government and judicial system works, especially, isn't he himself a judge? Right?
Well, he was a judge at the Kuala Lumpur tribunal, which, again, was modeled on the same system that we set up with the Common Law Court of Justice in Brussels. And he himself admitted in conversations with me that, yes, there's information in their tribunal that they didn't release publicly. Nobody attacked him over not doing that. So he understood the importance of anonymity with certain evidence. You know, so it comes back to the basic question of what is your objective in this stuff? Is it to look good, or is it to get to the heart of the crime and stop these crimes from carrying on? Right,
and I think I'm going to segue over to something that's popped up a few times, I think, throughout your history in covering this, and that is you seem to be criticized amongst a specific tribe of Indians, and they keep bringing up this Chief Capilano, who's a hereditary chief, and he's not really a true chief. Can you clarify for people what that whole thing is about?
Well, it's the old dilemma of trying to figure out another culture from the outside, and I you know, even after working with Native people for decades, they have their own understanding of these things. I'm not going to try to interpret,
right.
But there's an incredible internecine warfare going on within the Native world as to who is the actual traditional elders. Because, of course, their whole culture was extremely messed up deliberately by the invaders. And traditional systems of power are not anything that we can really understand today because they were exterminated. The thing about when you're a target of genocide is the elders and the young are the first two to be targeted and destroyed. The keepers of the knowledge and the wisdom and the traditional legal systems in that, they're wiped out first. So for anyone to really claim that they're in touch with their traditions, it's an allegation. I have no proof of whether, in fact, they represent anything traditional. Mm-hmm. So I made the mistake of trying to wade into that whole debate, and I realized there's no point because nobody has a final answer about that. In any native band, you've got 3 or 4 different groups, each claiming hereditary traditional status. So it's not a matter of figuring out what side to take in that civil war. It's a question of, regardless of whether you're native or Caucasian or whatever your culture is, there's certain, in common law, it says all people are born with inherent liberties and rights and responsibilities. And that spans cultures, and that's the basis of our court. It wasn't being set up on a sectarian basis, but rather to address an issue that affects everybody, which is the trafficking and murder of our own children, whether they're native or white. So that was kind of the broad stroke on it. The specific criticism I received is that Jerry Capilano, one of the fellows in Vancouver who claimed to be traditional elder of the Squamish Nation, he was on my radio show on Co-op Radio for a number of years. When we began to do church occupations and those actions, he was at the forefront. In that very famous occupation we did of Holy Rosary Cathedral that really triggered the government's apology just a month before they began to make noise about an apology for the residential school genocide. He led that. He helped to lead that with me. He got a lot of press, and as soon as he got press, others began to come forward and say, no, he's not the hereditary leader, I am. And Watsuck was one of them, that fellow we mentioned earlier, all claiming that, no, they're the fraud, I'm the genuine one. Well, at that point, to me, that's not the issue. They can kind of haggle that out among themselves. Right. The only other Native nation that's raised that question and questioned me is the Mohawk, 6 Nations. And again, I was invited there in writing. This is all up online. There was a petition of 10 Mohawk elders who invited me to come in and survey the grounds of the Mohawk School. It's the oldest residential school in Canada from the 1830s, and they claimed there were children buried there. So with their permission, we began to do archaeological surveys with qualified forensic specialists and archaeologists. As always happens, 1 or 2 of their number were approached by another faction on the Mohawk Reserve. It's called the Grand River Mohawks near Brantford, Ontario. One of the factions is tied in with the government. They're called the 6 Nations Confederacy. They're the government chiefs. Bill Montour, the head of that group, the day we began digging, he got called to Ottawa. He came back and he tried to shut down the dig. He began to pay off some of the elders. One of them, Frank Miller, went on and created a video where he claimed that all of the elders were against me and I had been digging up children without their permission, which was a total lie. And they started the whole, YouTube campaign, which people are now repeating like it's gospel when it came out of one of the 10 elders. So, this is the tactics of divide and conquer they used against them originally, and they use against anybody who's trying to get at the heart of the genocide, like I've been trying to do for 20 years.
Okay, well, thanks for that clarification. I think that will assist people in connecting some of the dots because that keeps coming up. Now, Alfred also really hammers the aspect of you supposedly using these other names, George Defort and Jeremiah Jordine. Can you comment on that?
Well, again, where is his proof? I remember the one time I met Noam Chomsky, he, just as a little aside, Noam, I talked about all the smears against me, and he said, oh, yeah, well, the FBI used to circulate rumors that I was having sex and doing drugs with graduate students. And I said, so what'd you do? He said, I just said to the reporters, show me the evidence. And it all stopped. Well, again, like I said to Alfred, show me the evidence. The name George Defort is a pseudonym. It's not me. It's one of the people in Brussels. He used that name so he wouldn't die. Jeremiah Jordine, again, was a Métis elder from Winnipeg who was closely tied with Louis Daniels, one of the 6 people killed. And this is going to be the part of the grand jury investigation in Vancouver. One of the things we're going to be looking at is the campaign that actually led to the assassination of 6 members of our network in a COINTELPRO operation. Louis Daniels was one of those elders killed, we believe, by the federal government and the RCMP. Wow. And killing Indians is an old habit for the RCMP, so this is not a wild allegation. Jeremiah Jourdain was a relative of Louis Daniels, and he took on that pseudonym after Louis died because he was very scared, and he operated under that name for a little while, and then he dropped out of sight. So, yeah, I mean, it's kind of like me saying, well, Alfred Webre isn't his real name. Prove that it is. I mean, these are pointless allegations because he has no way of proving it or disproving it. I just gave my explanation, and people can, accept it or not.
Right, right. So, are you familiar with this ski mask gentleman that was taken out, supposedly, according to Alex and Berard?
Ski mask.
They continuously referred to this person in one of the interviews as someone who had hip issues, and he was taken out, and they constantly referred to him and what he was doing for the people.
Ski mask. No, the name is familiar. It came up, again, it's trying to remember hundreds of conversations and that. I remember the name Ski Mask came up a few times when we were meeting in Vancouver. It doesn't really ring a bell.
He supposedly handed out pamphlets for you to people.
Yeah, I'm sure he did take part. There were a lot of Native people involved once upon a time in our group before it was again targeted and destroyed. What I'm going through right now has only happened to this extent, and I should have said this right at the beginning. This thing being led by Alfred and others is the biggest, most coordinated assault on us that we've experienced since 2008, when the federal government brought in their official apology on the residential school genocide. They had to shut down all of our public profile. They had to silence any other voice or interpretation. So a big smear attacked us in 2008. The only other time prior to that we've faced this magnitude of organized defamation is in 1998 when we did the first tribunal into the residential schools, and this stuff all began to come out. It even got reported in the Toronto Globe and Mail, Canada's biggest newspaper. So there was a big counterattack on us then too. But this ranks at a very high level, and it's because I believe a whole number of things that are going on now in the world. We can talk about that. The network we had in Vancouver was very extensive. We had 50, 100 Native people active in our church occupations, in our actions. And every single one of them, they were either killed or driven out. The last time I was in the downtown east side of Vancouver, I didn't see any of them. They've been scared into wherever, silence or hiding.
Wow. Well, maybe that's why a couple of comments that I'd like you to respond to. One is if someone said to you, well, Kevin, all we keep hearing is that you don't give a damn about the Indians. You're an outsider. What would you say to that?
Give a damn?
Yeah.
Well, they'd say, look at my history. I lost my family, my job, my livelihood. I go through these kinds of character assassinations every day because I wasn't trying to speak for Natives. I was speaking of my own culture, trying to ask them to explain why we wiped out so many of the Natives under the guise of Christianity. I've been devoting my life for 20 years to Aboriginal people. So, it's a really uninformed comment for somebody to say something like that. And I think it's a result of the 5-minute memory. People don't understand my whole history and what I've been involved in. And so I think it's just a statement made out of ignorance.
Okay, and the other one was that you've known what's been going on the whole time, that you rally people to get them to be activists, and then you walk away and are not willing to answer the hard questions when they approach you.
Well, again, where's the evidence? Because I don't remember dodging a hard question. I spend my whole time organizing groups and being there as much as, low income allows. You see, I don't, unlike some of my critics, I'm not on the government payroll. I'm not, funded by anybody. It's all community funded. So what I can do is totally determined by how much the community supports me. That keeps me honest. What is my motive in all this? It's certainly not to get rich. It's certainly not to have a comfortable life. These are other more silly accusations designed to really just inflame people, I think.
Kevin, many people, when I was talking on Sunday and you came up in the conversation, the whole room, we all agreed there's very few people, if any, that we know of that would have taken this position to try to, expose and discredit and bring down the most corrupt institution on the planet, So I think for those of us who know what waters you've been treading in, this is just so par for the course. And if people watch this video, it is fascinating to see the mind control tactics that are used. Yeah. It's like there's a pattern in it. That's all I'm going to say is go back and just pay attention to what is stated. There's a lot of fear porn in this one particular video. For 2 hours, he talks about, the bio-warfare. He talks about the genocide of child trafficking, infiltrating the sovereign movement. He talks about you infiltrating the sovereign movement, by the way. He talks about me infiltrating. He talks about electromagnetic gas chamber, that we are all dying. This, words are very powerful.
Wow.
Very powerful. And when you're listening to this, your mind is possibly, if you don't, have the wherewithal to I don't know, stave it off. You have the opportunity, let's just say, to dive into a lot of fear. And I just noticed this. I'm just going to give you guys a couple more examples. So we have indigenous genocide to child trafficking. We have one big electromagnetic gas chamber, we're all dying. We have double agents are everywhere. We have patterns. We have no one is behind Kevin any length of time. So, of course, that's creating, oh, my God, are we really putting our faith in someone that's even going to stay there for us? Okay, which is one of our biggest fears out there.
That's an early one they used, yeah.
It says, we need to be careful of globalist tyranny, biotechnotronic enslavement, and genocide. This was said again. Then we were told that the military avoids these things. This was in context of that statement, and it said, politicians, departments of police, mayors, Supreme Court justices, etc., they're all serving a world terrorist organization. What does that sound like, folks? Master organization, weaponized air technology, stopping us from doing anything about it. Okay?
Well, it all has one word. Yeah, it has one word, Alexandra, and he's inciting people to hatred. If there were incitement to hatred laws in Canada, we could easily sue Alfred from Here to Kingdom Come for not only libeling me and obstructing justice, which is what he's doing by this, but he's inciting people to hatred. And, when people are incited far enough to hatred, they pick up a gun. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, it's very clear to me that from the way you're describing it, that's exactly what this agenda is.
I'm going to put this up on my website. I'm just going to let everybody see it with their own two eyes. I've actually underlined and I've typed these verbatim from this 2-hour interview. And it goes over and over and over. Technological experimentation, electronics on human beings. This is by no accident. And this was not Alfred. Alfred was very quiet. He was standing in the background just letting these two talk.
Soft cop.
Yeah, he was very, very quiet.
Yep.
So anyway, back to the topic at hand regarding some questions. Now, the biggest allegation that's coming forth right now is they did bring up that you had an ex-wife and that you introduced another wife, her name's Carol, and that apparently she was furious with you later that you would have ever even introduced her as your wife. Do you want to comment on that? I know this is your private life. That's for you.
Excuse me? I haven't heard this one yet.
Yeah.
No, I have no idea what they're talking about. It's kind of like... Again, we're not doing tit for tat here, but I mean, Alfred is a pretty disturbed man. I have to say that honestly. If we're just bottom line. I'm not attacking him as a person, but sitting there, knowing him for over 10 years, I always was worried that he was on the verge of a nervous breakdown, and he has to always be right. he always has to be cast in the role of he has the inside track, and he has to be right, and the other person has to be wrong. Now, that I can understand how he could be easily manipulated on that basis, but to make up this stuff like that is a total new one. I have no idea what they're talking about with that.
Well, in his defense, this did not come from Alfred. This came from what's his name? Kevin Hunter? Wait, what's his name? Alexandra.
Alexander doesn't even know Carol. He doesn't even know anything about my personal life. I mean, again, it's a paranoid fabrication.
Yeah. And
I have no idea what they're talking about.
I do want to insert in this that anybody who's an interviewer and you hear someone, I'm just going to give you an example here, Kevin, because I know you just didn't even bother to listen to this. But he was going along and he was talking about why haven't you been willing to go to court and testify for one of these men that came forward and said, Kevin, you have all this information. Why won't you come to court to testify for me? Now, any of us with any kind of brain is going to get it, okay?
We don't recognize crown courts, period.
Right. I mean, why would you step into their jurisdiction, which is the box, by the way, guys, which goes back to Saturn, which goes back to the whole Matrix. Why would you even put yourself in that? But anyway, he said, this to me just really reeked of despicable behavior, and that was, he probably gave $10 to someone to say that it was his daughter. And then, his Carol is his wife. The daughter didn't look anything like him. Well, that would have been quite unfortunate if she did.
Okay, but I mean, again, Alexandra, this is like these lies and character assassinations are put out there so that people respond and get caught up in their web. It's supposed to get me all angry and upset, right?
I'm only pointing this out to people because if they want to take the higher spiritual path here, really look at these notes, guys, because it's not coming from a higher path.
No.
Period.
Our general position, Alexandra, we've had policy in all the work I've done from the very beginning, is there's certain bottom lines, ethical bottom lines for me. And the first was we don't take money from the church or the government or any corporate area. We're just publicly funded. Second is we don't libel and attack one another on a personal basis, because the minute you go after another member of your network on a personal attack, you've removed yourself from any reasonable or logical purpose. You're outside the pale. And for Alfred or any of these people to even do this, they're totally outside any rational discourse. I mean, they're engaged in hate-mongering and incitement to violence, essentially. This is where it all leads.
Feels like it's an incitement.
Exactly. And as a matter of fact, and I need all of them to hear this, they have set themselves up to be named in the indictment in the grand jury as people who were involved in not only obstructing justice, but incitement to hatred and violence. And this is definitely going to be part of what's put in the docket in the grand jury, because not to get back at them, but to say your actions by doing this are causing the deaths of children. You're impeding a criminal investigation, and you're giving aid and comfort to the people killing these children.
This is true, because as much as I didn't want to do this interview today, everybody, but I felt like something, I was given some messages as well, that this was absolutely essential to rally all of you to step back and hold the space for being the observer and not getting pulled into all this drama. We are not going to respond to every single thing that Alfred puts out there, okay, just so everybody knows. Kevin's going to continue on with his work, and I'm going to continue on with mine. But I think it's really important, because so many allegations were made just like, bam, from nowhere. And that would be my next question is, what do you feel exactly triggered this?
Well, I worked in a psychiatric ward as a psych aide for 3 years, and one of the things I noticed when I was on the schizophrenic and psychotic ward is when you sit there with the patients long enough, you begin to enter their world, and their fantasies become real. I mean, you can begin to see their point of view. You can begin to share their feelings. It's kind of like when you get people to walk in a circle, eventually everyone's walking in at the same pace. Mm-hmm. Human beings do that. It's about energy. You conform to the dominant pattern.
Definitely.
And these people are literally nuts. People who are making these allegations, they're unstable people. And if you listen to them long enough, you begin to enter their fantasy. So, I mean, it's, we draw a strict line and say we're not even responding because it's nuts what they're saying. There's no basis to it. There's no evidence. Why even give them a hearing? But, beyond that, the reason it's happening, the reason they're being put up to it right now, and it's happening on a big scale, what hasn't been mentioned is Alfred did this in a coordinated manner with 3 or 4 people all over the world who were attacking me all at the same time. It was a coordinated operation, and it has money behind it. It's professionals. It's like the way our first tribunal was taken down in 1998. Professional operation of divide and conquer. Yeah. And COINTELPRO. This is emanating out of the CSIS in Ottawa, that's the Canadian Security Intelligence Service. I've got my own information on that, which I can talk about, but that's a different issue. But their whole method is divide and conquer, and it's happening right now because globally we know that there's a big shift coming up. The new year and this coming year is going to be fundamental in the changes that are happening. Oh, and the cabal, they have their backs to the wall. The hard evidence coming out of London and Rome is that both the Pope and the Queen are considering stepping down. One of the reasons the Queen is because in January, when a constitutional republic is announced in Canada and convened, her authority will literally then be null and void, right? And at that point, under international law, people will have the right to go in and arrest her in Buckingham Palace. And if we have enough people on board with that, that can finally happen because she has no more constituted authority in Canada or anywhere in the Commonwealth, in England, anywhere. That's the simple law. And I think because of that, they're heightening the whole campaign to shut down, well, to preoccupy us so that we don't move on this opportunity given to us.
I agree, and just to add that from a spiritual perspective, after what was accomplished in Africa, I can definitely say with confidence that the entire Dark Minion battalion that was serving what I've been told about 12% of the very dark higher-ups that are running the planet, or at least were running the planet, many of them are falling to the wayside, they have been removed, folks. I mean, it's game over. So we are at the final hour, and we need to be cognizant of what is being shown to us right now. We are being played. We're being yes. played like a ping pong ball. It's almost as if they're going to see if we have any kind of character or any kind of unwavering dedication to just stay on task. And staying right. on task is focusing fully on bringing this corrupt government and the religious organizations that are behind all of this down so that we can start yes. a new society. That's the ultimate goal here.
Right, and if we're vibrating on the level created by Alfred and the others and simply getting angry or responding or even taking anything they say seriously, then we are being kept at that low level and we're not going to be able to consciously step into that new world. So I think definitely that's part of this whole agenda.
Well, now, Kevin, you probably haven't heard, but he already put out another video in response to your statement yesterday. And the video states that he has spoken with, several women who are now claiming that they have romantic relationships with you, that these relationships...
Over the Internet.
These relationships are with you over the Internet, and that you have manipulated, this is an accusation made, you've manipulated up to $150,000 over 20 years to support your lifestyle, jet-setting around the world with multiple women in Europe.
Oh, of course, jet-setting. Is that the term he uses?
It is. I typed this out exactly as it was spoken.
He's really flipped his noodle now. I mean, I could line up, if it was worth the trouble, which it isn't, I could line up lots of people in Europe who describe how my jet setting consists of the couch surfing in their living room, not having enough money for hotels, working. It's absurd. I mean, I think, the whole strategy of the big lie is that you tell a big enough lie and it gets the people so upset that they can't logically respond, right?
Right.
And something that huge, I mean, I really think, in a way, I'm kind of speechless because I don't know how to respond to something like that. It's, how could I maintain a relationship with anyone in the lifestyle I lead, which is constantly on the go, in a state of continual poverty,
Well, also,
where is
continual, do not forget, in a continual state of threat.
How could I? Where is his evidence I have $150,000 made? Let's, instead of all these lies, Alfred, produce the bank statements. Produce the evidence that anyone ever gave me $150,000. I mean, this is nuts.
Well, you know what? You just said it. Produce. And they're really good at that. They're
well, yeah.
I
mean, you can
producing and planting, what they need to present.
Does he name who these people are? Does he name incidents? I mean, that's what any quote would do.
He had a woman friend, he says, who he appointed as an administrator for the ITCCS Facebook page, which he founded, he said. He became very suspicious of you because you appointed her all of a sudden and simultaneously started romancing her and several women around the planet via the Internet.
Can I give you an example of this? And I think we're getting too drawn into this stuff, but let me just give you one example of how Alfred is constructing an enormous lie right there. The woman he's referring to, she goes by the name Deva. Deva Peters. She lives up in Nelson, British Columbia. And she was taken on by him as an administrator because for about 2 years I had known her over email. We had a friendship. She had been initially referring to me as dear and love all the time, which I found, it sounded like it was an entrapment, so I kept my distance. When one of the people, I think her name was Rachel Kavanagh, who was another one posing as a jilted lover, I think she's in New Zealand, this is the honey trap technique. As a matter of fact, Alfred talked about this on the air with me, that, the honey trap method is that these women come forward, if the paternity suits at least, claims that this person's being harassing me, whatever. And in response to Rachel having done that, David steps forward, and this is the pattern. As soon as one does it, another steps forward to say, here, Kevin, I'll help you out, and then they end up doing it too. It's like keeps you in a continual merry-go-round. That's what happened. Deva said she would take over the administration from Rachel. I said, fine. Alfred accepted that. There was no talk by either of them of my untoward intention toward her. And the next thing I knew is just about a month ago, Deva, with no statement or provocation for me, started saying to Alfred that Kevin's actions toward me had been inappropriate. And so I wrote back to her and I said, what inappropriate actions? She never answered. She just cut off contact. So again, it's like people coming forward, creating an appearance, entrapping you in effect, and then claiming to the world, and of course they're believable because they're a woman versus a man, just like a native versus a white guy is going to be believed. They create a scenario that you can't get out of because it's this he said, she said scenario. So, I am so appalled that Alfred would resort to that level of fabrication. I knew he was disturbed, but this is criminal libel, what he's doing.
Well, the other thing I still think you should address is he is claiming that you were framed for having sex on a table that was videotaped, and supposedly this is at Co-op Radio, Vancouver.
Yeah.
And supposedly you were, because of this incident, it forced a Bilderberger shutdown of all the radio shows, affecting him and you and everyone else.
He's blaming me for the shutdown of Corp Radio. Okay. Well, the fallacy of that is that he and I think one other programmer were actually removed from Co-op Radio before the so-called incident ever happened. So that puts an end to that lie right there. But no, what occurred was I was 2 weeks after I had an Aboriginal woman on my program who claimed that she saw RCMP officers taking Native women out to the serial killer's farm, Willie Picton. We aired that. They said the RCMP are involved in the murdering of Aboriginal women. There was an eyewitness who saw them. 2 weeks later, I was told I was removed from Co-op Radio, which was federally funded, government-funded public radio station. It's actually now being taken over and privatized. There's a private media conglomerate that now own it. So I was removed. I said, on what grounds? They said, you had sex and were doing drugs with a woman at 5 a.m., in Studio B, which I said, well, Studio B has cameras in it. I know that. Why would I do that in front of TV cameras at 5 in the morning when I was asleep 2 miles away in East Vancouver? And I got an affidavit from the woman whose house I was staying at that, yes, he was on the couch. I gave that to Corporation. It didn't matter. They started circulating the stuff. So I said, okay, let's see the videotape. He said, you saw this on video. Let's see the videotape. Never produced it. Now, considering all the people in that part of the world who would love to display that kind of stuff about me, how come it's never appeared on YouTube if it exists? Mm-hmm. Wouldn't it be the first thing they published, showing horrible Kevin doing these horrible things at Co-op Radio? Now, obviously it didn't happen. Alfred knows it didn't happen. He also knows that what was the cause of the shutdown of all those programs wasn't me. And if you search his old programs, we even talked about this. He said on the air, and I quote, he said the shutdown of Co-op Radio was due to a whole campaign involving getting rid of controversial programmers who might challenge the Jim Pattison takeover of Co-op Radio.
Wow.
Okay, so why isn't he repeating that now? Jim Pattison is this media mogul who bought up Vancouver Co-op Radio. He paid off the staff members in secret to conceal his grab of the station because the Canadian government changed the law allowing public radio stations to be bought up by corporations. That was the other issue. All the programmers were shut down. Alfred admitted that. He said it was because we might have commented on Pattison takeover at Co-op Radio that we were all let go. Now he's suddenly saying it's my fault. Has he changed his tune about that whole thing? I mean, this is more proof that he's just fabricating things.
Wow. Well, okay, here's one. If you want to, what would you say to someone that said that you were an actual inside global intelligence agent? That it could appear that way from the outside in?
You know, it's kind of like reading National Enquirer. What Alfred's become is National Enquirer Vancouver. Is Kevin really Elvis? Is he the child of aliens who's coming to infect the planet, whatever? I mean, how do I respond to this stuff, Alexandra? I could say, no, of course I'm not, but like, it's absurd. It's like having a conversation with folks on the psych ward. You know, it's nuts.
Well, this is why we're just going to put this out, and people can make their own decision now. But I felt that it behooved you to respond to some of the allegations that were being made. I think one of the most important things to ask you is why these four people in this warcrimestribunal.org that he's put together, Magnus Olsson in Sweden, Melanie Richant in Brussels, former Laurel Louis of the Belgian Member of Parliament in Brussels, and Alfred Webre. Can you comment
why what?
on that?
I didn't hear the question.
Well, I'm wondering why them. Why were these the selected people to participate in this tribunal? And he claims, quote, it was decided that you did not fit in to be part of the transhumanist tribunal, unquote.
No, as of about 3 weeks ago, it was the other way around. Alfred told me that Laurent Louis didn't fit in. Now, this is a very interesting twist that went on. Alfred and I, again, we talked about this on the air. It's on the public record if we dig up his old shows. But in email conversations and a Skype conversation he and I and Melanie had, we set up, there was this thing called the Dutch People's Tribunal. And out of that, Alfred wanted to set up a transhumanist, like a war crimes tribunal into transhumanism. And he said child trafficking is an important component of that because grabbing and conditioning children and trafficking them and killing them is part of the whole way, part of the whole transhumanist, programming of the human race. So he said to me that I should conduct the first phase and Laurent Louis should conduct the second into transhumanism, and I'd handle the child trafficking case. He put forward my name to be the prosecutor in the first phase of it. Laurent Louis then came out and said he had doubts about some of the allegations against the Pope and the Queen. Alfred called me up, very upset, and said, look, I don't think we should have Laurent Louis as the public prosecutor. He's facing trial. He's got a young child. He's very vulnerable. We don't want our prosecutor manipulated, and including if he's got a soft spot towards the Pope and the Queen. So I said, okay, we are in a conversation with Melanie. The last time I talked to the two of them, here's what it was decided. And this was in early December, just before they turned Alfred, or he went nuts or whatever reason he's doing all this nonsense. I said to Alfred, fine, I agree with you. I don't think it would be good to have Laurent if he's that vulnerable. And so Alfred and I said, and Alfred was very firm about these. He said, we can't have Laurent Louis. Kevin, you do it. And we said to Melanie, please tell Laurent that because she's his liaison. And she said, okay, well, I'll let him know that. After that, I didn't hear from anybody. Next thing I know, I'm the what's the term, black hat? I'm the evil guy all of a sudden. I mean, so it's all strange. It could be tied up with that. I think that what, in fact, could be going on is the powers that be in Europe got to Laurent Louis. They threatened him in a big way, and part of the deal, he was facing a 2 or 3 year prison term. He's got a newborn baby. They probably struck a deal with him. And part of that deal may very well have been get rid of this Kevin Annett, that he's getting too close to stuff. Okay, that's speculated on my part, but it's very strange how Alfred totally has turned the story around now to make it look like I was the oddball out, when in fact it was Laurent Louis that we were thinking of not involving in that war crimes trivia.
It did feel like Laurent Louis was one of the main catalysts to this whole thing, just because of his connections and being so high up in, governmental liaisons and that kind of thing. Now, the other two things that have come up is basically Alfred is saying that he had to issue a protective order mandating that you have no contact with him, and the other one was he is claiming that you are spreading information around about the fact that he has received money and moved into a larger home, and he basically went into this very detailed explanation of where he lives, and he lives with 10 people, and they all share the rent and the utilities, and he lives off of his Social Security. Did you want to comment on that? Those are two accusations he's also made.
Okay, what was the first one again? It's just kind of was a blur after a while.
The first one was, I know, it's just like, I can't even believe I'm doing this. It was a protective order. He was seen, he basically said that
I got that.
a public hostile response towards him when he challenged whether you were du fort or not.
Okay. What happened was the folks in Europe are very upset about all the stuff he's doing, and in communications with him, they said, what's the best way to do this? And I said, look, I'm not going to take this personally. We have to put this on the broader issue of the crimes and how this is part of the attempt to cover them up, including during Saturnalia when the child sacrifices are going to spike. Yeah. I think this is frankly a big distraction to cover those. But anyway, I've got other ideas about that. But they said, okay, then their suggestion was we should convene a grand jury in Vancouver, which is where a lot of this stuff is coming out of, about the Pan-Pacific human trafficking, the snuff films, all of the stuff that I've documented over 20 years. They want to move on because they think Alfred is very connected to that whole concealment operation now. And so the grand jury wrote to him and said that he asked to interview the people with the ITCCS. Again, he's searching to try to find out who they are. And they wrote back and said, we don't have confidence in you and your motives anymore because of what you're doing to Kevin, but we will be convening a grand jury to look into these things in Vancouver in January 15th, 2015. And if you meet with us, you may want to have your lawyer along because we're going to be asking you some hard questions. That was it. On the basis of that, Alfred issues a big knee-jerk reaction where he says none of us can come within however many feet of his house. He feels threatened by us. Well, again, why would he when we're just saying bring your lawyer along whenever you come to a meeting?
Right.
Because we have questions about what you're doing here. So that's that. The thing about his $5,000 a month house, he and Jerry, his wife, did move. They had a fairly modest house on 41st Avenue in Vancouver. They moved up into a richer part. And the first time I went over there for the interview, I said, hey, nice spread you got here. He said, he looked very embarrassed and looked away, and he wouldn't even look at me in the eye. And he said, well, yeah. I said, how much do you pay? He said, $4,800 a month. And I said, well, there's other people living there, right? And he said, yeah, there are people come and go, but we have more people living there. I said, okay. That was it. Now, after all this stuff happened, I began to compare dates, and it was just odd that there's that sudden infusion of money. Okay, now I'm not making any accusations against him. I'm saying in any situation, criminal investigation, you follow the money, and that's the first thing the prosecutor would ask Alfred: where did the money come from? Where are you funded? I mean, people are always asking me that question. That's the first question we'd have to ask. If he has been paid off, it would show up in something like his house, his bank account, etc. So I was just voicing to him what the grand jury would ask him if and when they subpoena him. Because he will be, probably, since he's been at the heart of this enormous Black Ops campaign against not just me. I mean, I'm minor in this thing, ultimately. It's the ITCCS and the criminal investigation that he's obstructing by these actions.
Okay, and just for the record, so everybody knows, he said $2,800 a month on his video. Okay, we'll leave it at that. So I think we've covered all the main accusations. I mean, the majority of what he has said has been that you're a globalist government agent. He's insinuated that he thinks that could be the case. They are calling you a liar, that they've basically stated that they're taking down all of the YouTube videos with you because they don't know what's truth and what's not. I haven't checked to see if that's actually happened. For those of you out there, maybe you can do that.
Well, it's well organized. This is very impressive.
Yeah, and again, I will put these notes up there so you guys can see the pattern and the repetition of Alex Hunter's, I should say, kind of monologue, because he goes on for a while. But double agents is spoken many, many times. Agent for the government, double agent, globalist agent, intelligence agent.
Yeah, well, it's part of the whole paranoia of our age. You know, people are, the fear and paranoia level is ramped up extremely high. You know.
Yes. So I'm saddened, frankly, everyone out there. I'm saddened that it has come to this, because I feel that Kevin has been very consistent in his quest and his campaign. He doesn't care what color skin they are or where they came from, what part of the world they're from. All he has been focused on is to bring down this diabolical operation, period. And when it goes to the very tip top like this is the type of stuff that he contends with. I mean, we just need to, because of the fact that none of us would even think this way, you know, that's the biggest difficulty, Kevin. None of us are going to think this way. You know? I mean, I would...
Well, you know, it's you know, yeah, I love that quote from Gandhi when he said, you know, before you take an action, think of the poorest child you've ever seen and ask him if that action will help that child in any way. And you know, I ask myself, I put everything in that context. Every day I ask myself that question. What am I going to do today that's going to actually help this? And this fighting with one another, it doesn't matter who's saying what about who.
Right.
Who does that help? It doesn't help them.
Exactly.
And I think that that's the bottom line here. You know, it ultimately doesn't matter who's who. It matters what we do, right?
Right.
And sorry, I just got a note handed to me here. You know, what we do is what counts, and we have to judge according to the results in the real world, and not this nonsense of accusation based on nothing but thin air. You know.
Yes. Yes. Well, again, I'm just trying to do a service to all of my listeners and anybody else that stumbles upon this video. I am not here to defame Alfred. I'm here to present the response of Kevin to the accusations that have been brought forth. I mean, I just felt like anybody deserves that, what do you call it? That table or that space to be able to say, hey, this is what I feel, this is what I know went on, so that people can hear from you, Kevin. I thought that was very important.
Well, yeah, thank you, Alexandra. Thanks for keeping the high ground. It's unfortunate the others haven't. I mean, I think if Alfred was as concerned about not defaming me as you are about him, then there wouldn't be a problem here. But again, ultimately, it's like, who is it serving? I mean, it's just mind-boggling to me how anyone could think that these kind of accusations could lead anywhere. I mean, what? I don't know. Well,
I think we should end it with this, and I really want to put this out there to all of you, because this is with a heavy heart. On the one hand, I want everyone to understand how much incredible progress Kevin and myself and all of you have made. We are literally crossing the bridge here, folks. And look at the timing. Look at all of the other variables. Really look at the wording. See what you feel in your heart when you're listening. Is it raising your vibration? Is it making your heart and your soul soar? Because if it's, I mean, I know that the topics that Kevin brings forth are not nice. They are absolutely repulsive, and a lot of times that can affect us a great deal. But I focus on the fact that he's made a lot of progress, and the Burnaby Mountain is a perfect example of it. I really feel this is another reason that the timing has been so crucial, Kevin.
Yep.
Is that momentum. That momentum that took off after that. People actually saw the power in
and that's why we're being attacked so much right now, because they realized these people are waking up to their power. The common law warrants work. We better take this guy out now. And it's that simple. And why they would, I mean, I'm not worried about Alfred anymore. He's a pawn, or he's a deliberate agent. I mean, nobody does this, gets down into the gutter and throws that kind of mud unless they're being paid to do it, frankly, or they're a wacko. Because you don't do that to somebody you worked with for 10 years without, first of all, going to them. Yeah. That's my question. Why didn't he call me up and say, Kevin, I have these concerns, let's talk? That didn't happen once. One moment, he's my best buddy. The next minute, I'm the enemy. And that happened literally in a 24-hour period between December 14th and 15th, after he had been on a radio program. So that's something he has to start answering, why he's doing this.
I have to add to that, just so everybody's aware, this has not only happened to Kevin, but it's happened to me, and I know two other personal friends who are a bit higher profile on the Internet. It's happened to them as well. Very prominent people that they thought were their friends, claiming that they, communicated with them, this and that and the other, and it never even happened. So where do you go from with all this information? Don't get into a state of confusion. You have the intuitive ability to step back from this and not get drawn in. And you have the mastery to really know what is truth. The truth is love, light, justice, harmony, peace, and striving to take a righteous stance. And righteousness doesn't have to be coming from your ego. In fact, it should be coming from humility. So I call on all of you out there to please support the cause and stay on task with what Kevin is trying to do, and that is shut this operation down, free all of these children, babies, or orphans, all the stuff, the prostitutes, the young girls that are just reaching puberty, and their parents are selling them into these organizations because they're broke. I mean, it goes all over the world, and it touches in every aspect of our lives, even if we choose not to look at it and see it. He's exposing something none of us really want to face. It's another reason why he gets attacked so brutally. Remember the walk that he takes, and it's every day. I mean, that was one other thing I was going to bring up, Kevin, is what is your typical day? I know you say you're not in fear, which is one of the only reasons you could be doing this, by the way, is to be as fearless as you are and so committed to your Creator. You're just so on fire to serve your Creator, and I love that about you. But, what is it like to walk your shoes?
I'd say half the day I spend meeting with people. These could be anyone from a Native person suffering from the residential school syndrome. More and more it's people who are being brutalized in some way, within the system. People who just come to me constantly for help. The rest of the time is in writing and research, organizing a lot of the common law groups, the Republic of Canada group in Canada. It's constant, and it's nonstop, and it's like 16 hours a day plus, 7 days a week, no income, just donations. So, what I find at the end of the day, Alexandra, is the human part of me is just so sick at heart that any human being would do what these people are doing.
Yeah.
It's no one with a conscience would do what Alfred and the others are doing. That's the point. So I don't believe, I'm not even referring to him as Alfred anymore. I don't know what he is. Mm-hmm. I don't know what these people are, but they're not people who are acting out of any kind of conscience. So, and that's why I had to really kind of bite my tongue in this interview because ultimately I don't see the point of even talking about them.
Right.
Because that's not the work we're meant to do, right? But I know the truth has to be addressed, and now that we've done it, I hope we can, move on.
Totally. I mean, and I can guarantee you nobody else is going to want to hear this interview again. You know what I mean?
Yeah, but it's good. It's good to go on the record because, legally, if something is uncontested, it stands as fact. So it's important to respond. But that's it.
Yeah, I agree. Well, thank you so much. I want to end this by saying, hey, don't throw in the hat. Don't get hopeless. Don't get into a state of depression. We are still moving forward. The momentum is absolutely incredible. And in fact, it's really kind of put a fire under my feet to start going out and speaking myself about what truly was accomplished in Africa. If all of you only knew how much freedom, how much more freedom we have now, just in the last couple of months, it would blow your mind. And I hope that if I ever speak in your neighborhood, you will hear that with your own eyes and ears and heart.
And Alexandra, do you mind if I just have a final word?
Yeah, absolutely. Go for it.
It's that I off air I referred to you, this is kind of like the analogy of a forest fire that clears away the dead underbrush and allows new growth to come up. When a real trauma like this happens, when the darkness manifests like this, and a lot of things are clarified, and it separates the wheat from the chaff both within us and among us. So I find the false part of myself has to fall away, and I have to stand in my own clarity when these attacks come. And among all the people around us, those who are easily misled by lies and are prey to the darkness are going to go that way, and those who are in the light are strengthened by attacks like this. So I think it's that separation that happens because of these attacks, and I think in the long run it's going to help us. As odious and disgusting as these things are right now, my experience is that's what's gotten me through 20 years, the recognizing that there's that spiritual process of cleansing and being elevated by these attacks because it's ultimately helping, the divine purpose.
Wow. I couldn't have said that any better, and wow. Thank you for that, Kevin. And thanks everybody for listening to this. Parts of this were so nauseating. I will put this on the web if you want to do your own research. Feel free to take it and run. Other than that, you know where we stand. We're not going to be hammering he said, she said any longer. But I do want everyone to know I have great, great faith and commitment and dedication to serving all of you, serving all of humanity, and serving my Creator at all times. So I'm standing in that truth, and I think Kevin is too. And so don't give up the fight. Don't give up the hope that we are moving, and we are moving fast in the right direction. So I hope that you all have a phenomenal Merry Christmas if you're celebrating Christmas, or a happy holiday. And Kevin, that goes for you too. And
thank you, Alexandra, and to everyone.
Yeah, we'll speak again soon. We have other information to bring forth that I think people are going to be very, very, very excited about. Yeah,
I look forward to a good face-to-face interview with you very soon in the new year.
Yes, I look forward to it. Thanks again, everyone. We'll talk to you soon. You all take care.